Welcome to Real Estate in the Tri-State, where we talk about all things buying, selling, and investing in the Dubuque area. Featuring experienced locals giving you their real estate insight. My name is Abby Rottler, and here is your host, my husband, Rob Rottler.
Okay, welcome back to another episode of Real Estate in the Tri-State. This one's looking a little bit different if you are seeing the video version. This is the first Zoom episode of Real Estate in the Tri-State. I'm excited to introduce our guest today. He oversees underwriting and market analysis and financial reporting at Kronos Investment Partners, which is a private equity firm that specializes in multifamily syndications. In his 20s, he has been able to quickly work his way into large multifamily deals and write 2 books. Outstanding. Ladies and gentlemen, the great and powerful John Stoeber. John, thanks for being on, man.
Robert, thanks so much for the great introduction. That's got to be the best one I've ever had.
Awesome. Yes, I did steal the great and powerful part from our man Joe Rogan, so that's not an original. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate you being on. I'm excited for this first one being virtual. It feels like a COVID shift almost without it technically being that. But let's just get into it. Can you just tell us just a bit about yourself so we can get to know you better?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm 26 years old, got into real estate about 3 or 4 years ago when I graduated from college. So I'd always kind of been bred to go the W-2 route, go to school, get really good grades, get a job, and then work until you die. Well, so my last semester in college, I spent the entire semester looking for a job, and days before I graduated, I got my job offer. And I'm super excited until I open up the compensation package, and it's $56,000 a year and a couple weeks of paid time off every year. And I'm looking at this and I'm just like, this isn't going to work. The semester before I had studied abroad, so I had the travel bug, and me and my buddies, we always went on these really big ski trips over winter break. And I was like, I don't make enough money to do the traveling. And our trips were 5 weeks over our winter break at college. So I didn't even have that much PTO. And so that led me to this rabbit hole of I need to earn passive income and I need to earn money while I sleep. And that ultimately led to real estate. So I graduate, I'm working my W-2 job, and I had this really long commute from outside of Washington, D.C. up to a suburb of Baltimore City, and the commute's killing me. So I bought my first 2-unit to do a little house hack on, got into that with an FHA loan, and I think I literally put down $4,500 to get into that house, which was freaking awesome. Yeah. Rent in Baltimore is you can get a place for $750 to $1,200 probably. So it was 4 to 6 months of rent was my down payment, and that was cool. Except I had to evict my very first tenant.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And you're still in it. That's great. Let's hear about it.
So I'm moving downstairs. I have to evict this tenant as soon as I move in because she just stops paying. And it's a really small row home that was converted into a duplex. And I slept right by the front window in this makeshift bedroom. And I was just staying up all night because I'm she better throw a brick through my window. And is it going to hit me in the head?
Yeah.
But so I got her out of there though, put a new tenant in the upstairs apartment, rented out my basement. And, at that point I'm living for free and building equity. So I kind of caught the bug at that point. So shortly after, I knew I needed to learn how to rehab properties. That's a big weakness of mine. I'm not good with tools and hammers and construction. So me and a couple partners, we go out and we buy this absolute gut job in Baltimore City. I mean, we had to do everything on this: new roof, mechanicals, digging out the basement, and then new sheetrock flooring, completely redid the kitchen. I mean, everything. So that was a really, really big learning experience for me. I learned a lot about contractors and renovations, but it was really, really painful going through that too. Huge learning curve. And, the guy who was going to really help us out with the construction just kind of, I don't really know what happened, but I think he just went off to go do some bigger and better things. And I felt like we were left holding the bag. So while we're doing this flip, me and the other partner, he had a 4-plex, I had this 2-unit. And we just kind of like came to the conclusion, we're like, every time we make a mistake on this flip, we got to put a bunch of money into it. Like if we miss something in the rehab budget, we're replacing the roof and that comes out of our profit. On these small multi-units though, whenever we make a mistake, we may not cash flow for the month, but like our tenants end up paying for it. We still pay down principal. We're still getting these tax advantages. We'd always wanted to do apartments anyways. The flipping, we tried some wholesaling and, doing like burrs on single family rehabs. That was all just like meant to be a stepping stone. And we're just like, we could spend 5 years trying to learn this and maybe we'll fail. It's not really what we want to do. Or we can just go buy apartments, like bigger apartments. And we're like, yeah, we're going to go buy apartments. And so that, that kind of like led us to where we are today.
Wow. Yeah, there is a lot there, and I'm going to try to remember all that as we unpack it here. So if you want to just explain, we've talked a little bit about house hacking on the show before, but so what were you doing with the house hack, and explain what that is?
Yeah, so house hacking is when you buy like a home or a small multi-unit and you're renting out like the other units or bedrooms in the home for income, and you're living for very little money or completely free, like in my case. So for me, I had this 2-unit. So I rented my upstairs apartment for $850 a month. And then I had the basement in my apartment that I lived in, and I rented that for $700 a month. So I'm bringing in $1,550 a month. I think my total payment with taxes and insurance was just below $1,300. And then I had like a pest control contract and I had to pay the utilities for my unit. But like when it was all said and done, those tenants covered all my bills and I was living for completely free. And I got into it with FHA financing. So like 3.5% down. I negotiated a repair credit at closing. That's how I got into it for like $4,500.
That's sick. I haven't had anyone with an FHA loan on the show yet, so I'd like to talk about that. But so you were in the downstairs unit yourself, but you also had a roommate. Is that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you're able to get $700 from the other roommate, and you had $850 upstairs. You had a bedroom, and you kind of okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's sweet.
Own little space.
That's great. That's awesome. So talk about the FHA a little bit. If you remember, what do you remember about that process? Now that you've done a few deals, what were some of the specific things that were different about the FHA loan? I guess, the low down 3.5% down is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the 3.5% down is like the biggest selling point of an FHA. So if you're listening and you're thinking like you have to save 25%, you don't if you're going to occupy the house. And because mine was a duplex, I couldn't get conventional financing unless I put a big down payment down. But if you find like a 4-bedroom house and you want to house hack that, you can go conventional with like, I think 3% down, 3 to 5. Mm-hmm. So when you have these low down payment loans, they have something on them called PMI, which it stands for, it's like some type of mortgage insurance and
private mortgage insurance. Yeah.
Yeah. So like on FHA, it's like 0.85% of your loan is like PMI, whereas if you go to conventional, it's a little lower. So if you can go, and also with FHA, it never goes away. Whereas with conventional, once you hit a certain like amount of equity, it does. So if you can get the conventional, definitely go with the conventional over the FHA. But if you have to go FHA, it's still sweet getting into a house for like $4,500. And I guess this is probably because I wasn't in like a super hot market. I mean, it was a row home in Baltimore City. Like, a lot of people say FHA, you got to deal with red tape because you're dealing with the government. For me, it was like a really straightforward process. But if you're in some super hot market where everyone's, overbidding and they're giving cash offers, your FHA loan may not be, competitive unless you're offering a much higher price. But that just wasn't really an issue with me.
Yeah, that's great. That's what I was thinking too. I hear some things about VA loans and such, having to deal with the government, and it's a longer process, a longer closing. Do you remember it being a longer closing and And like, were there some extra hoops to jump through? Did it have to be in certain good condition or anything? It sounds like you had a pretty smooth process with it.
So that's a good point you brought up about the condition. They did do an inspection on the property, and they made the old owner like repair some of the shingles, which for me, it was like, sweet, I'm getting free repairs. But no, it wasn't a super long closing. I think we closed in 45 days, and we could have done it in 30, but I had like a surgical procedure done at the time, and I was like, I need like 2 weeks to recover. But it was pretty simple.
Gotcha. Very cool. Very cool. So then what else? You went through, you were going to flip. So you did a flip in Baltimore, Baltimore City. You did a whole flip. And so were you hiring out a lot of that work with this? You said you had a contractor who felt like you kind of left you with the bag. You were trying to hire out most of that?
Initially, yeah, we thought we were going to hire out all the subcontractors, and me not knowing what I didn't know, I was like, okay, we're going to bring in the demo guys. They're going to demo the house. Then we're going to bring in, I guess the excavator to like dig out the basement a little bit. Then we'll bring in the plumber and like he'll do his rough in. And we thought it was just going to be like this like assembly line where everyone's going to come in on time. And of course, when you get into it, it's like, your plumber doesn't show up or he finishes late. So the guy who's coming in after him can't start now, which means like your whole process is getting delayed and people are taking other bids. And because we didn't have like a huge bench of contractors at the time, we had to deal with some pretty bad contractors. Fortunately, like the work wasn't shoddy. It's just like they wouldn't show up, or they would, I remember one like HVAC contractor, he told us he was going to start. He gave us what seemed like a super great price, and he just never shows up. And he's just like, oh yeah, like you have mold in the house and I have asthma. It's like, well, of course we have mold in the house. Like it's a complete gut job. And like, we're going to have to remediate that. Yeah. So eventually we did end up hiring a GC, and like they kind of just took it to the finish line. But even that, like it took forever to do that. And without having like a deep bench of other contractors you could go to, we were kind of stuck with that contractor.
Yeah, that's tough. I know contractors, hiring out contractors, it tends to be a sticking point for a lot of people. I don't know about, your area, your expertise in your area, but, in our area, it seems to be a very low number of contractors, the good ones. All the good ones are super busy.
Yeah. Yeah. They have like their repeat customers.
Mm-hmm. So then you guys were just like, you kind of you were thinking you were on the path. You eventually wanted to get to bigger apartments and bigger multifamily. And you're on the path. And then one day you're just like, no, we're not doing that anymore. How did you, do you remember, what do you remember about that? Was it a certain point where it was just like, okay, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to jump right in.
It was like a light bulb moment. So really? my partner who had the fourplex, he was dealing with this really crazy eviction. It was like 6 months. It's like, so he made like a bunch of rookie mistakes. He put a tenant in there before getting the deposit. And then, the tenant was like having trouble making payments. And she was like, I'm dealing with cancer. So he tried to be the nice guy, but eventually like he just had to evict her. And it was like a really long, painful, drawn out process. But he had these other units that were producing him income. And he's like, I'm not losing money every month on this property. I'm just not cash flowing. Whereas with the flip, I think like we had found out we were going to have to replace our roof. We didn't budget for that. And that was going to be like an extra $3,000. And we're like, well, there goes $3,000 off our bottom line. I'd also dealt with the eviction on, my property. And then I was dealing with a tenant who, he paid and everything worked out. He was just like a headache. And that was the point where we're like, yeah, like everything bad that happens with the flip, it comes right out of our bottom line. I mean, there's only one way to make money really with a flip, and that's when you sell. Whereas with buy and hold, you're getting principal paid down, you're getting tax advantages, you're getting cash flow. And if you're in a good area, you're getting appreciation too. And that's why we're just like, let's just go into multifamily, because it's like no matter what happens with these properties, like they don't lose money.
I like it a lot. So for someone who's listening, I feel like a lot of listeners might be tuning in and they're thinking, man, easy enough to say, but how do you do that? Like, where did you start the research? where did you go from there?
It started with like just reading lots of books and podcasts and getting educated on the subject. And luckily, like every multifamily investor, it seems like, has their own podcast. So there's tons of free content out there, but it takes a really long time. Because like, you know, at first we're like, we're going to go be like these big apartment investors. We're going to make all this cash flow. And then like you actually get into it and you're like, okay, like the guys who are buying these large commercial properties, like they usually have deep pockets. They're very sophisticated investors. And like we have very little track record and we don't have a ton of money. So like these are the guys we're competing with. It's like what it started out with was just like learning a skill and learning a way to find value. So hopefully we could partner with a more experienced like operator or team. And for me, I have a finance background. I went to school for finance and accounting, and I work in corporate finance. For me, that just like naturally translated to analyzing and underwriting multifamily properties. And that took me like probably close to a year to actually like figure out how to do that.
Wow. Yeah. And you probably have a crazy spreadsheet now, like Excel spreadsheet that has all the different metrics, and it autofills so many things for you. And
I've got a few of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So you're analyzing like heck, you're studying like heck. And so then it was like almost a year later where you actually got into it. You want to talk about that first large multifamily deal and how'd you do it? And the other thing too is, you know, when you say we, is there a couple guys or a few guys where you've partnered with them the whole way and you're still together, that type of thing? Yeah, go into those, I guess.
Yeah, so that's our company, Kronos. So I have two partners, Ryan and Fritz, and me and Ryan, like our company Kronos actually did not get into this latest deal. You know, through networking and developing a skill, you know, we had met someone, she had a deal under contract back in March, and COVID happened, the whole world like blew up and the deal fell out of contract. So she put it back under contract though in like May, and closing was set for the end of June. And I had seen the deal, I'd analyzed it, and, you know, I developed a good relationship with her. Obviously, like I know my other partner, Ryan. And for me, it was just like, you know, I've been searching for a good deal for almost 2 years at that point, maybe like a year and a half. This is probably the best one I've seen that I actually have a chance to get in on like the active side. So I just went in on that joint venture with them.
Nice. Very good. And how'd you finance? Commercial, 20% down?
No. We this was a totally distressed property. Like no bank would lend on it, so we got it on a master lease option. So we got it. We did some creative financing.
Yeah, you want to explain that? Go into that a little bit. I'm excited for this. I love creative finance. It's like I can't get enough of it. So let's hear it.
So this is I think it's pretty awesome. A master lease option is kind of like seller financing. It's just you don't take title to the property. But like this owner, he had a mortgage on the property. And what I think a lot of people don't realize is like true seller financing, they usually have to own it free and clear because banks don't want other positions on the property. So what we did was a master lease option or a wrap mortgage where he had certain payments he had to make to his lender, and we're paying him. Well, actually, we're wrapping around him and paying the title company, and the title company then pays his mortgage. So I think his payments for these properties are like $3,400 a month. What my partner Emma did is she negotiated this deal where we're paying him $3,400 a month, but it's like from day one, it was like 60% principal, 40% interest. So we're just paying like tons of money of principal off every single month. And that's how we financed the deal. So we didn't have to, you know, come to the table with cash or go get a bank loan. And then we have to fund our own renovations.
Fund your own renovations. So you're paying down lots of principal on that original wrap mortgage you talk about. Were you eventually planning to like refinance after a certain amount of time? Did you have like a balloon payment or anything with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to refi or you have to sell to pay the person. It's called carrying the paper to pay them off. You know, he doesn't want to carry a note that's earning him 3% for 25 years.
Gotcha. So how long did that take? Do you remember? Are you still doing it?
No, we're still. So we closed on the deal in June, and we have a 2-year term with him. So we're like 7 months in right now, I think. And we've renovated like probably over half the units that we're going to renovate. We're leasing them up and getting really strong rents. So there's going to come a point probably this summer where they're going to list it for sale, or we're going to start the refi process.
Nice. So you're doing some of the renovations now. How bad? What was the condition like? You said the bank wouldn't lend on it.
It was really bad. Some of these were really bad, like totally trash units. Need all new appliances. But to be honest, a lot of the mechanicals are actually in good condition. I'm knocking on wood right now. Like, yeah. During our inspections, we found some issues with the plumbing and the electric, but we negotiated so the seller had to repair them. So thus far, it's been mostly cosmetic. We had to do a little bit of plumbing work on one of the buildings, and then I think we have a leak on that same building, so we're planning to repair that. But yeah, we painted the exterior on one of the buildings, and we're just doing like interior renovations with new paint, patching sheetrock where we need to, putting, glue down, I think LVT flooring, and we're placing appliances when we need to. And then putting like water, I don't know what it's called, like low flow toilets and water fixtures in there. So like a water conservation program.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Save on the water bills.
Yeah.
You're paying all the utilities, or at least the water, or?
We're paying the water, but no, gas and electric are separately metered on the one property, and the other one just has electric, and that's separately metered. So that's awesome because it keeps the expenses down. Yeah.
So how many so it's 2 different buildings. How many units? Where's it at? Tell us a little bit more about the property.
Yeah. So we have an 18-unit property and a 16-unit property, and they're located in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Oh, dang. So this is a long distance thing for you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy cow. How did you find that, man?
It's my partner, Emma. She got it through a wholesaler of all the places you could get a deal from.
And remind me, how did you find Emma?
I met her at an event, like a live event last March, like right as COVID started to hit the United States. We just connected and then kept staying in touch. And later she's like, I got this deal I need to close and we need money to close. And I'd seen the deal. So I was like, okay, like this is probably the best opportunity I'll have unless I want to wait another year or two.
Wow. That's awesome. As far as like the numbers, you're a huge numbers guy. You're a spreadsheet guy. You're a numbers guy. What were those numbers like that you said they were some of the best you'd seen, some of them, at least some of the best that you thought you had a chance at? What were some of those numbers like?
Yeah. So for 34 units, we bought them for $800,000, which comes out to about like $23.5K a door, which is like super cheap. Our rehab budget is somewhere between like, in the one building, it's only been like between $5,000 and $6,000 a unit. We haven't had to do any exterior work yet. On the other building, it's probably about $10K a door. So we're in the units for like, with the rehab, like 28 to 33K a door. And there's other, you got like closing costs and other costs in there, but it's like our all-in costs for these units are like in the low 30s. And when you stabilize the income after like we do all the renovations and you look at the sales comps in the rest of the market and the sub-market, the sales comps, some of them are like 55K a door. And that's like what our NOI, when you take the cap rate in the market, it's saying the same thing. It's like the one building we're going to get like 45K a door, and the other one we're going to get like 53K a door. So it's like you look at those numbers, it's like, okay, we're all in for like, let's just say 32K a door on both properties, and we're going to sell it for like 47K a door. I mean, it's a 15K a door profit margin on like pretty low cost units too. So there's just like a huge spread on them, and the units are renting for like $650 to $700 a month. So it's like, it's easily over the 2% rule, even when you account for like all the rehab and all the other soft costs.
Love it. Talk about the 2% rule for our guys.
Yeah. 2% rule is just, it's your monthly rent is 2% of the purchase price. So for ours, if you take the purchase price of like 23.5K, you take $700 rents, we're like almost at the 3% rule. But
Wow,
but as you get into like these lower cost units and lower rents, like you actually need to be at like the 2 to 3% rule, because expenses tend to stay fixed, whether it's like a $2,000 a month unit or like a $700 a month unit. Like carpet costs what it costs if if you're repairing that.
Gotcha. Makes sense. How do you think you were able to find, like, how was Emma able to bring that to you without, someone else, some of these deep pockets, big multifamily people catching it first?
I think there's a few reasons for that. I mean, it's an 18 unit and a 16 unit. So I think a lot of the bigger players, they tend to avoid that stuff more. Once you get to 100 plus units, that's where you can start to have a full-time staff on the property. And like, it's really a lot more passive. Our property, it's a very management intensive deal that we're doing, just because it doesn't quite have the economies of scale. And then they're in C neighborhoods, but like when we bought them, they were D properties. I mean, like tons of delinquency, tons of tenants we had to kick out of there. And I think a lot of more experienced, sophisticated investors who have deep pockets, they can go after some of these like B class properties where it's cash flowing from day one. It's in really good shape. And through just good management and maybe like a small renovation plan, they can increase the rents. So it's much more passive for them.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, and it's kind of in that, you got 34, you're talking 34 units. It's a little bit too small for some of those big players,
Mm-hmm.
and it's too big yet for, 95% of people, or, 95% of just your average Joe investor. So that makes sense. Kind of that little sweet spot there.
Yeah. And that's actually a good point you brought up, because like we had to form a partnership to take it down. So like a lot of individuals they don't have the money for it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So heavy management going on. Is this other partner, Emma, your boots on the ground? Is she the one who's there to be able to go check on it, or what's?
No. So she lives in Salt Lake City. Ryan lives in Jacksonville.
That's crazy.
I was in Maryland and now I'm in Denver. But so we have two other partners named Rob and Jana, and they live in Dallas, Fort Worth. So it's like a 4-hour drive for them, which still isn't great, but they can get to the property about, they're averaging like once or twice a month just to check on renovations and, make sure it's being managed properly.
Wow. That is cool. That's, I feel like when you look back on this in 20 years or 30 years or whatever, you're going to be like, man, we took a big risk there. We were all over. We just had to do something, but it was like either risk staying, jumping along, getting a little bit bigger, and eventually 34 units. But I mean, that's awesome. Huge learning experience, I'm sure, for you.
Oh yeah.
So, are you still looking for more? Are you still looking to grow, or is this kind of taking up a lot of your time, or what do you guys talk about Kronos and you guys and what your mission is and what you're doing?
Yeah, so it's definitely taking up a lot of time, but no, it's starting to stabilize. So we are still looking for deals because Ryan lives in Jacksonville. I mean, Florida is just like such a great market right now. You got all like the demographic trends. People are moving there. Jobs are going there. Incomes are rising. So we're really making a big push to build out some teams in Florida, especially in North Florida where he's located. And we're trying to do like another joint venture on maybe a small to mid-sized property like this. And we're actually trying to do our first syndication as a company there this year. And our mission at Kronos is just, we want to revitalize communities. We want to revitalize these apartment communities and make them better, nicer places to live.
That's great. You want to talk a little bit about a syndication, what that is? We haven't really talked much about that on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. A syndication is just where, if you have a deal, you're raising money for that deal and you're issuing a security through it. So you're going to have to hire an attorney. They're going to draft up what's called a private placement memorandum, or PPM for short. And then you're going to have to go raise money from passive investors, and you're offering them equity in the deal much like a company like Walmart offers equity in the form of a stock purchase. Luckily, you don't have to do an IPO. There's exemptions for that, but you're essentially just raising money from what's called limited partners, and they get a share of the equity in the deal.
Cool. How do you, okay, so this is awesome. I really like this because it's like, this is something where, if you're working a W-2 job, or if you're not, you don't have the income or whatever, but you know how to do it, what you're looking for, these investment numbers to be looking for, the type of properties and all the other metrics there. But if you don't have the money, you can raise the money in the form of a syndication. I like it a lot. How are you getting people on board?
As investors.
Sell me.
Investors.
Imagine I have a ton of money and I'm just waiting to invest in something, but I want it to be passive.
Oh my God, I'm poor. I'd be the wrong person to talk about this.
You're not the salesman?
No, not at all. I'm
You're
the guy. Yeah, I'm like, hey, let me go to my quiet little room and just crunch the numbers, and then I would show you the spreadsheet, and you might be like, oh, this deal looks really good. But the way we're primarily raising money is we have we call it an ideal, client avatar. It's like, who would be the perfect person to invest with us, and who are we targeting? So for us, one of our avatars, we have a couple, is really successful real estate agents, wholesalers, and house flippers, because these people make boatloads of money, high 6 figures, 7 figures a year in some place. But because it's ordinary income, they're getting crushed by taxes. I mean, they might be paying 40 to 50% of their income in the form of taxes. But because they're real estate professionals, in the eyes of the IRS, they don't have passive activity losses, which basically means they can write off an unlimited amount of write-offs on their taxes. And with these multifamily properties, we do something called cost segregation, which is where you're just accelerating the depreciation on the property. And often you can accelerate huge amounts of the depreciation into the first year of ownership. So if you're some house flipper making $1 million a year, and if you make $1 million investment, so to say, you may literally get a $1 million write-off on your taxes, which means all of a sudden your taxable income just went from $1 million to $0. I have a friend who made he made $1 million investment, and he got a $1.3 million write-off on his taxes through cost segregation. So that's our avatar. And one of my partners, he gets on LinkedIn, and he's got this really cool tool where it's called LinkedIn Helper, where he just tells them, he's target real estate agents in these markets. It sends them an automated message so he doesn't have to do it. And he gets on phone calls with them. And he's in a mastermind where, there's people looking to invest passively. So he's getting into that. And then we have our podcast too, which we're just using to reach people, get our names out there, and raise money through that way.
Dude, that is sweet. Man, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
That's great. That's the $1.3 million tax write-off. It's huge.
It's crazy. I mean, and he lives in New York State, so he was paying a boatload in taxes.
Yeah. Yeah, because state income tax in New York is way high, right?
Super high, yeah. And he made a lot of money, so he's in the highest tax bracket.
Gotcha. Huh. So that's kind of your avatar. That's exactly who you'd be looking for. Is there a minimum contribution that you're looking for?
I think $50K. I don't think we've actually set a minimum contribution. At $25K, we'd probably be it's not enough because there's extra legal and administrative work for it. But if it's $1 million deal we're going after, and we have to raise $300,000, $25K is actually a pretty big investment.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So you talk about cost segregation. If somebody's investing in real estate right now and they're just they're listening to this, or cost segregation, what the heck? Where should they start if they want to if they want to buy a property this year and they want to use cost segregation to expedite the depreciation? Who should they talk to? Where should they start?
You got to find a cost segregation firm that, they specialize in this stuff. So One name I can throw out is Madison Specs. Like, just give them a call. There's a guy named Yona Weiss. Like, I guarantee you he'll be happy to explain all the nitty gritty details about cost segregation. But the cool thing about investing in large real estate is it actually makes sense to do the cost segregation because it costs money. It's like you're probably going to pay $5,000 to $10,000 for the study to be done, maybe more if it's a really big property. And if you're buying a single family home for like $80K, it doesn't really make sense to get a cost segregation study done for probably $4K. You're buying a $5 million building, $15K. It's not like a drop in the bucket, but like it's just a cost of doing business.
Gotcha. I never really heard of the whole study thing. I don't know if people talk to their CPAs around here, their tax people, a little smaller market than, some of these areas you're talking about. It's interesting though. Madison, this guy through Madison sounds pretty cool. So
yeah, Madison Specs, like Madison, the city, and then Specs, SPECS.
Gotcha. Sweet. So man, you sure have studied up a lot. Like you know the lingo, all this stuff. Like you're catching it from podcasts and books, huh?
Yeah, and going to events, and like you have to know the lingo. Because if you know the lingo, like that's where people are going to start to take you seriously. And that's part of the learning curve of commercial real estate is just like, talking with people, networking with people, books, podcasts, because like you have to get this lingo down to where even if you haven't done a deal, people are going to know you're sophisticated and you know what you're talking about. And hopefully you can leverage your way into someone else's deal to start to develop your own track record.
Love it. Yeah, I'm hoping for 2021 to bring back some events. I want to go to a live event this year, like a Bigger Pockets or something. Like,
yeah, so do I. Yeah, they're so much fun. Yeah. I missed it in 2020.
So talk about your books.
So the book I wrote it's called How to Analyze Big Apartment Buildings and Make Them Feel Small. And that's just kind of like, I wrote that like for my underwriting journey. Again, like I went to school for like finance and accounting. Like I'm a spreadsheet nerd. I love that stuff. And when I started to like underwrite deals, I thought it would come kind of naturally to me because I could figure out the numbers. But then you start looking at like the income statements and the rent rolls. You're trying to like forecast out what rents are now versus what they can be. And for me, at least, I was just like, I have no idea how a building operates. I don't know how much to budget for like repairs and maintenance, landscaping and trash, or like what type of financing I can get on the property. And with these bigger deals, like there's so many inputs and assumptions you have to make, and it can be super overwhelming. So that's why it took me like a year to figure all this stuff out, because it was like every day or every week, it's like, all right, I got to figure out this other assumption. How do I figure it out? And then it just kind of came to me. I was like, if I'm having this much trouble learning how to analyze deals, there's probably other people out there who they're not like spreadsheet jockeys and they don't love this stuff like I do. And they probably don't, they probably quit. They probably don't want to figure out all this stuff because it's just too overwhelming to them. That's why I wrote the book. So I was like,
awesome.
Here's like the really like basics of it. And like, here are the resources you need to like actually figure out these assumptions.
Where can a guy like me buy that book?
Well, I would be happy to mail you a copy, but we have a free ebook it's called, the link is like a bit.ly link and then just /underwriting ebook. So you can get a free ebook, and then we have hard copies too, where you just got to pay for the shipping and handling.
Sweet. People in the tri-state area, hit them up. This is awesome. Just delivering value. Very cool. And then there's another book you were part of, right?
Not that I remember, actually.
Okay. Gotcha. This is listeners, if you couldn't tell, I'm just meeting John on the podcast. So some of my research was a little faulty, it seems like. But it's great to meet you. Let's roll into some of these closing questions. I know you have a busy day. I don't want to take up your whole day. So closing questions. Here we go. What's your favorite book?
Ooh, my favorite book or my favorite real estate book?
Go with both.
All right. So my favorite real estate book is called Real Estate Finance Risks and Opportunities by Peter Linneman. It's like this textbook for, like numbers and quantity people like me, but he's got some really good models in there, and he gets like really in the weeds for, just like analyzing properties. And my favorite like non-real estate books, I'm a big like fantasy fiction person, so I really like the Game of Thrones books, and I really hope that George R.R. Martin finishes writing them.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I'll have to check out that real estate one. I haven't heard of that one yet. So
it's dry. I'm gonna warn you. Like, you really have to enjoy numbers. Ooh. But if you do, like, I thought it was great, but my partner tried to read it. He's just like, nah, dude. Like,
not for him.
Yeah, like this is for you, not for me.
That's great. All right. What are your hobbies?
I love to snowboard and I love to travel, and I love to go to the gym too and play sports.
What sports do you play?
Well, snowboarding is like my big one right now, but I played baseball growing up, so I love baseball.
Sweet, man. That's sweet. Next one. If you had to point to the one thing you either learned, developed, or were just born with that makes you successful, what would that be?
I think I have an ability to just focus on what I really want and then like design my life around that focus and that goal. So like, when I came out of college, I knew I had to create passive income streams or I was going to be in a corporate job for my entire life. So I just kind of designed my life around keeping my expenses really low so I could save money and eliminating a lot of distractions, which, some people would say like it takes a lot of sacrifice, but for me, it's just like, this is my goal. Like I want to get out of this job or at least be free to leave. And this is how I'm going to design my life.
That's sweet. Lifestyle design. Have you read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek?
I haven't read it.
Oh, I bet you'd like it.
Yeah, I bet I would.
That'd be great. So talking about, and this is beyond the closing questions, but where do you see the future of it going for you? Like, you're kind of reverse engineering your life, it seems like. Where do you see it going?
So this year, I think I'm going to make some pretty good investments with my money. And I'm just going to actually start to develop those passive income streams. And then once I have it, I actually don't know if I'm going to leave my job just because with the full-time remote, it's really flexible. But I do plan on traveling more and just taking more ski trips. And like I've been working really hard since I got out of college. I mean, crazy hours. So once I start to actually make some money, I'll continue working really hard. But I'm really like focusing more this year on like enjoying life in the moment.
Love that a lot. That's something that I thought a lot about too going into this year. Like, I got to make sure, keep working hard. It's a fine line, right? It's like it's a balancing act. You got to work really, really hard. You still got to enjoy it though while you're doing it. So
yeah. And like 2020, like really opened my eyes up to that. I was living at home and with COVID with older parents, they're just like, I just worked the entire year, which was great. It was like planting seeds, but I didn't really get to have much fun. And then like I come out to Denver and I'm just like having the time of my life and I'm still working hard too. And I'm like, I need to do both.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I went to Denver last summer, got married out in Colorado. It's a pretty cool spot. I have yet to ski out there though. And like I go skiing all the time in the Midwest and it's like, it's on my bucket list. I cannot believe I haven't skied out there yet. It's so close to me here in Iowa.
So you got to come skiing out here, and I have to read the 4-Hour Workweek.
Nice. We both have homework.
Right.
All right. So who is someone you're wanting to meet?
Someone I've wanted to meet? I would love to meet Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger and just learn more about how they analyze investments.
Warren Buffett is mentioned a lot. He's amazing. It's crazy how simple. It's crazy what like I'll watch YouTube videos and stuff. I haven't read a bunch on him, but I'll watch some videos. It's just so simple. These principles that he kind of operates his life on.
Yeah.
I don't know how Yeah, it's crazy. Those are good ones. What are you currently focusing on, and how can the listeners help you?
I mean, I'm really focused on getting a syndication done in Florida this year. So, if you're in Florida and you're looking to invest in a deal, like our company's definitely open to partnering on deals. And if you want to learn how to invest passively in real estate, definitely reach out. I'm happy to have a conversation.
That's a good offer. Listeners, reach out.
Yeah, and even if it's not with us, I'll try to be an open book.
You have been an open book. You're like, we're just breaking the surface. I can tell in the mind of like everything that's going. I can just tell there's a lot going on up there. That's sweet. So when you talk about Florida, again, I'm going off the cuff here, a little rabbit hole. So you're looking at average income. You're looking at what are these other metrics that you're using to study different cities that you want to target for your next big deal?
So average income or average household income is huge, and then the median rent price. So we're definitely looking for the rent to be about 35% of the median income because that's affordable. And if it's lower than that tells me there's actually room to raise rent. Population growth is huge because if more people are coming into an area, that means there's going to be more demand for housing. Number of like construction new starts is also huge because if you have a ton of people moving to an area and there's not enough construction going up, then you're going to have a lot more demand than supply, which means, again, rents are going to go up. And then, things like crime, school districts, employers.
Where are you finding this info at?
You can find a lot of it on websites like City Data. There's this really cool website I use. I think it's called Bearfax, like BEAR Facts. And you can find tons of information on like income growth by county and by city, metropolitan area. And there's this great resource you and your listeners got to check out called Market Nomad, where they just take like tons of data from all of these different sources like City Data, the Census, and Bearfax, and they just aggregate it into one website. So I think you can like drill down to the zip code, and it just gives you like tons and tons of data on your markets.
Nice. And you have spreadsheets that you're using to bring it all together.
Kind of. No, like because if you
for that one, it brings it all together for you.
Yeah, like Market Nomad does it all for you. Like it's a really, really cool tool.
Do you have it bookmarked on your laptop?
I do not.
Wow.
But if I type in market, like Market Nomad comes up.
If you type in market MAR, it starts popping up.
Yeah, so it's like quicker for me to go that way than to open up the bookmark.
I like it. That's cool. Appreciate that. That's a very valuable thing. I've never heard of it, never been there, but I'm definitely checking out.
It's a new tool, and yeah, I think it's a really good one.
Okay, two more closing questions. What do you think separates successful real estate investors from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
Like as cliche as it is, I think it's just grit and perseverance. Like the only reason I ended up getting into the 34 unit deal I'm in now is because I stuck it out, and like I was in the game long enough for an opportunity to eventually present itself.
Good advice. I like that one a lot. Yeah, a lot of these things, it's like, I mean, just to add my 2 cents to that, I think grit, obviously it's great. It's like, if you just keep doing it, if you just don't stop, you're going to eventually figure it out. Like you're going to get there. It's just, I don't know, shiny object syndrome, or like it go and gets tough and move on to something that's easier. I don't know. But that's kind of my philosophy going into real estate. Like I think investing is going to be a huge part of my future. And it's just like, if I don't stop, if I just keep doing it, it's going to work.
Yeah. And like what I think of too is real estate, like it's not like some industry like tech. Like you got to be really freaking smart to start a tech company and sell it. You really don't have to be that smart to be successful in real estate. Like it's a tough business, but like it's not super complicated, like starting some tech company. So if you just don't quit, like most people have the ability to learn this stuff.
Yes. That is huge. That's a golden nugget too. I love it. Yeah, I was just meeting with a guy yesterday. I had a coffee with a kid, 20 years old. He's like, hey, I'm interested in investing. And he wanted to meet up, have coffee. It was great. But that's what we kind of talked about. It's like, you don't have to be a super genius. You don't have to have a ton of money for this. And that's why it's like perfect for the average person, perfect path to, financial freedom or wealth or whatever you want type of thing.
Totally.
Love it. Love it. We're on the same wavelength here. Going into the last question here. This is a fun bonus question. What is the nastiest injury you've had from snowboarding? And what's the coolest trick you've ever done snowboarding?
I think the nastiest injury I've had is I've probably had a concussion. Not like diagnosed, but I've been fortunate where I haven't gotten like a really bad injury.
Nice.
I have run into a tree a couple times though, but like not too bad. Not like one of those huge, oak trees either.
Yeah.
And the best trick, I've thrown like a 360. I can't do like a backflip on a board, which is weird because I can do a backflip on land, but like not a snowboard.
Interesting.
I need to throw one. I need to throw one on a board.
Yeah, you gotta send it. One of my bucket list items is to do a standing flat ground backflip. So I just got to put my mind. Yeah. And I just got to put my mind to it. And as far as like the backflip on a board, I can do it on a wakeboard, but it's different on a snowboard. It's definitely a lot bit different, but
it's like, you just got to commit. And until you've done it, at least for me, I'm just like, if I do this wrong and I'm going like 40 miles an hour, I'm going to die. And like,
yeah.
And that's what it's like, on land too. It's just like, if I do this wrong, I'm going to break my neck and die. And then you do it and you're like, okay, like I know how to do it now.
So more homework. Next time you hit the slopes, you're going to try a backflip. And I'm going to try a standing on flat ground backflip after this.
Yeah, you may not be hearing from me again if I try backflip. I'll be in the
Let's not do that. Hey, you didn't hear that here. You did not hear that on the show. Okay, close it out. Hey, I really appreciate being on. How can people learn more about you?
Yeah, so you reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram. My name's John Stoeber, and on Instagram it's John_Stoeber. You can check out our podcast called the Millennials, a multifamily podcast, and check out our book, How to Analyze Big Apartment Buildings and Make Them Feel Small.
Yes. Yes. Reach out to him. Stoeber is Stoeber.
Yes. So, you got the spelling right.
Yes. I'm sure that gets mixed up every once in a while. So cool. Thank you again, John. I really appreciate you being on. And listeners, thanks for tuning in. If you found this valuable, really interesting conversation here about big multifamily. We don't talk about it enough on the show. It's awesome. If you found it valuable, please like and share and subscribe and all that good jazz for the algorithm. Really appreciate you guys listening in, and we'll see you next week.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Real Estate in the Tri-State. We want to encourage all of our listeners to send in any and all real estate questions to us at rottlerpodcast@gmail.com. More details in our show notes.
And as always, let's have a great day, folks.